Hello, and welcome to another episode of Retro Mags Revisited. So, here we are in our second episode, and we're already going to do things a little bit differently. For today's magazine, I do actually have a physical copy on hand. So, today we're actually going to be looking at this issue of Anime Insider. I know that we had kind of started out looking at video game mags with the last episode, and I have a plan on doing mostly video game magazines. But when I managed to find this particular issue that was saved among some of the issues I was able to save from my parents' house, I figured really want to go over it. I didn't want to go through a bunch of other episodes and just not circle back to this one. I also found another issue as well, and an issue of New Type magazine, which was a different anime magazine back in the 2000s, which we'll take a look at another time. But for this particular recording, I want to go over the June and July 2004 issue of Anime Insider. So thanks for being here, and let's take a closer look. Okay, and here we are with a closer look at our cover for the June-July 2004 issue of Anime Insider. On this cover here, we see the main attraction is Gundam Seed. They also mention here how we have a 10-page expose, we'll say here, on Trigun Maximum. We have some details here on Samurai 7 and Chrono Crusade, along with an episode guide of Wolf Terrain, and then some details here on Ghost in the Shell as well. But we'll go ahead and we will start taking a look. Although before I do that, I will say the 10 free Dragon Ball GT cards, 1000% no idea where those are at this point. I vaguely remember it coming with those, but I have no idea at all where those are at this point. But let's go ahead and let's take a look here. So, as was common with all magazines at the time, especially like the video game magazines, Anime Insider here definitely was very much ad driven. So we have a ad here for Demon Lord Dante, which I can't say I actually ever saw. And then we also have ROD, or Read or Die, the TV show. Read or Die started out as it was either an OVA or a movie release, I forget which, and then this is kind of a TV show spinoff, which is actually pretty common back in the day. Both of these you'll see were actually done by Genion/Pioneer. So Pioneer was kind of an older name for like a division of Pioneer, like I think Pioneer Electronics, that was doing some anime releases, kind of the same way like you have Sony Pictures, and they started to rebrand themselves to Genion. I'm not 100% sure if it was like they were just rebranding it or if they did a spinoff or what. But there was a brief time where they were listing both company names in there, and then from after that it went to just straight Genion, which at this point is just all doesn't exist anymore, but they actually had a fair amount of decent titles back in the day. Next, we have an ad here for Final Fantasy XI. This is showing off where you could buy the box set here for the PS2, which actually included a hard drive. But in order to use that hard drive, you actually had to have the fat PS2 version. If you bought the slim, you couldn't get the hard drive, and you couldn't actually play Final Fantasy XI on PS2. It would only be available for PC. I myself played Final Fantasy XI a little bit on PC. It was actually the first MMO I actually tried to play. I wasn't really ready for it to play so much differently than the other Final Fantasy games that had come out at the time. So I definitely didn't make it all that far before I kind of gave up on my subscription. Something I kind of wish I had stayed with, though, because I know eventually I got into World of Warcraft, and I bet I would have really liked Final Fantasy XI if I had stuck with it. But taking a look here, we got some more. We have our contents. Table of contents here is going through some of the several different sections that we have, and then with some of the features or some of the departments where they go over various details. Then we got Trigun Maximum. It looks like this is an ad over here. Then we got a little bit of a message here from the associate editor. And then I believe this is Witch Hunter Robin being shown here. Then we have an ad for Knights of the Zodiac, which apparently had a trading card game. I honestly had no idea about that. Next now here, this is where we have the mail section. So just like we saw with our Game Pro issue we looked over, and even when we're looking at the Game Informer, the mailbag is just kind of a staple of a lot of these retro magazines. I never actually sent one a letter in, but I always kind of wish I had. Granted, I'm sure enough people did. I don't think I had much of a chance of ever getting my letter posted in here if I had. But then we also have, you'll see in the corner here, they have a little bit of a web poll. Web poll here is going over what your favorite Gundam series is. No surprise, it's Gundam Wing. Gundam Wing here in the U.S. was definitely the most popular one because of how it aired on Toonami and was kind of the first mass distribution of a Gundam series. So that doesn't surprise me that it's number one. G Gundam here at 17%. That's a pretty respectable showing. I like G Gundam. It's not the most, we'll say, not the most racially sensitive Gundam series out there, but it's so tongue in cheek, you can't take it seriously. But for me though, it was just a fantastic watch for that one. The Statue of Liberty cannon probably was probably one of the funnier things to see, or maybe the boxing gloves that they put on the American Gundam. But it was a goofy show, so if you get a chance, give it a watch. Then we have fan art. So up here we got Chun-Li, always popular. I like the Naruto art because this is definitely from, it looks like the end of the battle he had against Gaara in the original Naruto series. Then we have what almost looks like an angel version of Super Saiyan 3 Goku. We have Ava. Then we got, my old eyes let me read better here. Looks like Yumi. I'm not 100% sure if I remember where she's from. And then, of course, we have Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin. And we have an ad here for Tokyo Godfathers. All right. Then they have a couple of other sections here. They have their vocab list. What are they saying? What do they mean? Kind of going over a few different some vocabulary you might hear in sometimes your dubs, but I think a lot of times in your subs, but just kind of trying to teach a little bit about what some of these phrases mean. Mangaka, for instance, here being the Japanese word for the creator of a manga. Then they have the culture shocker here. Why do the Japanese do these weird things they do? And they go into some explanations there, talk about a couple things. And they have the details here of where you can send your letters to. Then we have another card game here for Duel Masters, which again, didn't know it had a card game. The amount of card games that existed that I just didn't know about continues to grow by the day. Like there are just so many things I had no idea had a card game. Then we have Insider News. This is where they kind of talk about various different types of news, that's anime related. A little bit of talk here about the Toy Fair, and we see a few different anime related toys. Seeing some details here around Get Backers, which I remember watching that. That was actually a really good. I liked that anime quite a bit the first time I watched it. Tried to rewatch it again later, and for whatever reason, just didn't really vibe the second time. But the first time, I actually liked it quite a bit. Then we have the Death of the Month here, which we won't go into too much detail here from a spoiler aspect, but it is from Ninja Scroll, the TV series, which had a lot of memorable deaths. Then we have some more news here. Lip service. Looks like they did an interview here with Richard Cox, who's the voice of Inuyasha, who's also the voice of Bit in Zoids, and he's been on all kinds of other things. I remember randomly seeing him a couple times as a not quite an extra, but like a just very couple bit roles in the TV show Psych. So that was kind of funny seeing him there and just kind of vaguely hearing his voice. Um, but they got a few more pieces of the article in here. Then we have an ad here for Tokyo Pop. DN Angel. I actually really like that series quite a bit. Ironically, a friend of mine back in college, so we're talking probably close to 20 years ago, lent me all the pretty much the entire manga set, if not the whole manga set for DN Angel. And I found it in my basement the other day. So apparently I was that guy who didn't give it back. So I need to see if I could track her down and give that back to her. She helps out with some of the local anime conventions. Like I know she's helped before with Colorado Anime Fest, and I think she's also helped out with DakuCon. So hopefully, if I can connect with her this year, I'll try and see if I can give her those back. Then we got we have a story here from composer of Final Fantasy. Egg salad days, Tamagotchi's back and ready for action. Remember these Tamagotchis? Those things are. I could never keep mine alive for very long. I don't know what it was. Even when they released an app during like the 20th anniversary back like in 20, things like 2012 or something like that. They had an app on Android, and I still couldn't keep the dang thing alive. Then we have an ad here for Azumanga Daioh. I actually really like this series. This one actually I thought was really funny. I can't remember the name of the tall girl, but she's the one pictured in the back here. I always thought it was funny because she would always try to pet this cat, and that cat would always bite her. She loved that cat so much. Stray cat she just wanted to pet, and the thing would just chomp on her hand, and she'd be sad, but she'd still try to pet the thing. And then she was just this tiny little girl in the show, but her dog was so huge she could like ride it. So it was always funny seeing the tiny girl with the giant dog. But this was a fun, just really kind of like slice of life goofy comedy anime. No part of it took itself all that seriously. And then we got a few more things over here. Chuckleheads parodies are popping. Here's our top 5. Excel Saga. I remember watching that. That one's wild. It was think of like Panty and Stocking, but a little bit less sexual, but equally goofy. Like Excel Saga walked so Panty and Stocking could run because it was off the wall, but it was funny. It really didn't take itself seriously. Nadesco, I never actually watched all of Nadesco. I didn't realize that one was considered a parody. Um, Magical Shopping Arcade, Abenobashi, if I'm saying that right. I remember that vaguely. I watched that years ago. Thought that one was fun. Shines Man I never saw. Project Echo I saw. That one was it was Yuri coded, but it was also really silly. I watched that. It was one of the earlier animes I watched. I actually watched a couple of the OVAs on VHS tape of all things. But that was a fun one. And then over here they have the con job section where they talk about different anime cons that were scheduled. And no surprise, I don't see any mention here of Colorado, which Colorado, even though we were getting a little bit better when it comes to the con scene, it's just still back in 2004, our cons were nowhere near big enough to show up in a magazine compared to stuff you're seeing in like Florida, California, heck, Toronto, it looks like. Over here, we have an ad for Yu Yu Hakusho, which this looks like. Yep, another trading card game. I do not know how they have so many trading card games. I missed out on like all of them somehow. Then here we have Rich Hunter Robin. versus Yomiko Reedman. So this is kind of like, think of this almost like a version of like Death Battle, if you've ever seen that. But they're just kind of comparing two different characters, and they're talking about who would win in a fight. On this one, let's see. Looks like they gave this one to Yumiko, our resident bookworm, who is low key powerful. You just wouldn't realize it, but she's from Read or Die, the OVA, not from the TV series. Then we have a story here about Kaleido Star. It's kind of funny seeing these, which have just felt like such old anime at this point. Yet at the same time, when these are coming out, these things are pretty much brand new when this issue came out. Over here we have them talking about Ghost in the Shell and Dead Leaves, which I forgot Dead Leaves even existed, so that takes me back. That was from Manga Video, which is another brand of anime and manga company we had back in the early 2000s. They're around the late 90s as well. Then they're talking here about some series that are coming to America. And we have an ad over here for Saint Seiya. Man, I don't know what's going on over here. I didn't pay enough attention to that. But then we got ourselves a big preview here for Chrono Crusade. Now, Chrono Crusade is actually is a pretty decent anime. It's not one of the my favorites, but it's really good. I actually have the box set on DVD. But I originally rented all the discs through Netflix back when they did their disc delivery service, which is where I got a ton of my anime before streaming was available. And I'd watched the whole series and eventually decided I wanted to buy it. It was a little bit of a letdown because when it first came out, the logo in there looked on Chrono looked very similar to the C on Chrono Trigger, which if you happen to see my our last episode of Retro Mags Revisited, I talked about how it's my favorite game of all time. And for half a second, I was like, is this related? No relation whatsoever. Has nothing to do with that game. Completely different storyline. Still enjoyable, though. Still glad I watched it. But you have Rosette and Chrono here. Rosette, who's a nun, who you wouldn't really tell without how it's set up down here at the bottom. But overall, though, still great series. Really enjoyed it quite a bit. Chrono's actually a demon while she's a nun. Anime being anime explains how that all happened and how close they become. And there's always that little hint of love in the background. But will they ever go anywhere? It's anime, so of course not. But anyway, good show. Feel free to give it a look if you can find it somewhere streaming. And then this is where we have our cover feature here about Gundam Seed. So they have some concept art down here, and then it's a big 2-page fold out or spread here for Gundam Seed. So they go into a little bit about that detail. And then we get another bit of concept art as well. Over here, then we move on to an ad for Bast of Syndrome, which I can't say I've ever watched that. This takes me back because this one was produced by ADV Films. ADV Films was one of the biggest anime companies back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. A lot of the titles that you see on High Dive were on ADV. They rebranded as Sentai after the AVD business went under, and that was probably somewhere like around the 2010s, give or take a couple years. But ADV Films had a ton of anime that I really enjoyed. They were the really big name before Funimation came around, and they just produced a ton of different anime. I think Chrono Crusade, which we just talked about a minute ago, was an ADV Films brand, and they just had a whole lot of stuff that was done underneath that company. Then we have more concept art here. This is for the Rider Gundam. Then we have an ad here for Yukikaze, which I've never actually heard of that one. That one was done by Bandai, which, hey, that company actually still is around. And then we got more concept art here, the Forbidden Gundam, which is awesome. So for those of you who miss Gundam Death Scythe, this is your dude. Then we got an ad here for Wedding Peach. Again, there's our ADV films. You'll also see next to it here they talk about the Anime Network. It was something you could subscribe through your cable or satellite provider, and it would just show anime all the time. It's evolved now to, I think it's still, you can still get it through your cable, and last I saw you can still get it through your cable provider and satellite provider, although I think it's more of an on-demand setup now, I believe. But don't quote me on that. It's been probably about a year or two since I actually saw it. And then we got more of our concept art here with our Justice Gundam. Reminds me quite a bit of the Epion from Gundam Wing. Then we have the Dragon Ball GT trading card game, which I have no idea where my cards that came free with this magazine are. Then we have a great feature here on Samurai 7. Samurai 7 was based on Seven Samurai, as you can see here, which also, for those who don't know, Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai was actually a pretty big influence for George Lucas when he was creating Star Wars. But it does a nice comparison here where it shows you the original actor from Seven Samurai and the corresponding anime character that's playing basically the same person here. So it kind of lets you know like who's who for those who watched the original. So if you get a chance to watch Seven Samurai or Samurai 7, I strongly recommend you give both of those a watch because those are both fantastic options for an evening. Although again, granted, Samurai 7's a full like 20 some episodes, so that might take you a little bit longer. Then we have some more ads over here. We have Burn Up Excess, which I remember seeing previews for that a lot. Never actually watched it. Then we have Nadia, The Secret of the Blue Water. Another one I saw ads for, never got around to watching it either. Soul Hunter, and then Destroy All Monsters. This is a nice, awesome Godzilla movie. But again, ADV Films, like I said, they were really big and popular back in the late 90s and early 2000s, put out a lot of different anime and Japanese movies. Then they have a nice feature here for DigiCarat's Crazy 8. And so we have a few different, go through 8 different episodes here. These I'm honestly not really familiar with at all, but if you know much about them, feel free to leave a comment. And here is some details on the Read or Die TV series, going over some of the characters, giving some background. And this is continued. There's our girl who won that battle against Rich Hunter Robin earlier in this issue. And then here's an ad for the Wizard World Tour, which was Wizard of the Coast, just one of the cons that they happen to put on. And it looks like we got more Read or Die details here. Another ad for the Wizard World Tour. Really want you to go to Philadelphia, but then there is also Chicago, Dallas, and Los Angeles, it looks like. Then they have a nice article here on Wolf's Rain. Funny story about Wolf's Rain. My first dog that I adopted when I was out of college, Goofy Border Collie, I miss him very much, but his name was Kiba. He was dual named after Kiba from Wolf's Rain and also Kiba from Naruto. But then they also go and talk about the comparisons between Wolf's Rain and Cowboy Bebop, which are both done by the same studio. Again, go to Philadelphia. They really want us at the con. Fortunately, I think we're about almost 22 years too late, it looks like. And more going over the episode guide for Wolf's Rain. And then back again here for the Wizard World Tour. It's funny because this is the June and July episode or issue. Now, I know that these issues always come out a little bit before the actual months they say they're for, but you really have to be like, they're really hoping you bought this really early and somehow are going to have time to get to this particular con in May for them to put this many ads and not focus it on maybe Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, which are ones that are upcoming, which you could actually plan for. And then episode guide continues. Hey, look, who'd have thunk it? Wizard Universe. But at least this one's not for the con. All right, and then they jump into a article here on Rave Master. Which, hey, look, there's our buddy Blue, which always makes me laugh since I always like him in Fairy Tale. And I think he's in Eden Zero too. But speaking of Rave Master, like, why can't this be streaming somewhere? Like, I'd really love to be able to watch this. Like, I didn't get to watch all of it when it was on TV, and I never actually got the DVDs for it. So this is one I haven't been able to watch. Like, I love Fairy Tale. I like Eden Zero. I'd really like to be able to watch some Rave Master, but it's one of those ones where I guess licensing somewhere is tricky, and we just don't get to get it streaming anywhere. So maybe one of these days I'll just bite the bullet and order the DVDs off of eBay or something. And then here we have Trigun Maximum. So it's giving us a preview. And we actually even have a couple of manga cells or manga pages you can take a look at. And let's go kind of take a look at all these that we got here. This will be the part where it'd actually be kind of nice if we were doing this digital. But, you know, I'm still glad to have the physical copy here that we can go over together. But nice little preview here for Trigun Maximum. Then from there, we go ahead and we transition over to our DVD section. So, like I'd mentioned, all of our anime pretty much we got on DVD at this time back in 2004. Streaming wasn't a thing. You might be able to find some knockoff videos online. You probably could torrent some stuff, but to really pick up quality anime, you were going DVD. So they talk a little bit about Ghost of the Shell. Then we have Garden of Eden, China Connection. I don't know. I'm not familiar with these particular ones at all. But we got then Neon Genesis Evangelion, which speaks for itself. Oh My Goddess, which I've actually enjoyed pretty well. A buddy of mine really likes Bell Dandy. He's not a huge anime fan, but he loves Bell Dandy. Razafon, which is kind of your great value version of Ava. I honestly love Razafon. I really got into that show, and I really love the music, and especially the first intro song that they use for the first several episodes. I don't remember if they use it for the whole series, but I know they at least use it for the first half. But I'm actually a huge fan of Razafon. Strawberry Egg, never actually saw that one. And then they talk about Tenchi, the movie 2, Daughter of Darkness. I watched that. It was okay. It was a little weird, but overall it was still fine. Oh, and they do talk a little bit about Ghibli over here. It looks like some JoJo. And when also talking about when Blockbuster started adding DVDs in the mail option as well. But then they go on and they go into a whole lot more of the releases that are coming out for May and June of 2004. Angelic Layer, Big O, which was honestly way more fun than that anime had any right to be. Birdie the Mighty, Boys Over Flowers, never saw that. Comic Party, not familiar with that. Oh, the Mahoro action figure is pretty cool. I liked Mahoro-matic. I actually have a full box set for that one. Cyber City, Demon Lord Dante, so many things I haven't seen, but they kind of go on and on. Galaxy Angel, Gatekeepers, Heat Guy J, Initial D. Seen all these names of things that now just feel so old. Kitty Grade, I remember that one. What else we got here? Legend of the Mystical Ninja. There's my Mahoro-matic. That's their summer special. What else we have? Project Arms, Robotech, Saint Seiya, Sayuki. I watched a lot of Sayuki, and I still don't think I ever finished it because it was just so many DVDs for that one. This was already volume 10. Samurai Deeper Kyo. I never actually saw that, but wanted to. Escryed. Never knew how to pronounce it, but that one was also on Toonami for a while. Or maybe it was the Adult Swim variant. I forget exactly when they showed that one. And then Slayers Premium. Love Slayers. Love all the Slayers shows. And they talk about some more OVAs. So, Ayumi. I don't know anything about that one. Macross. And the Stratos 4. I think I have an idea what that's about, but I never saw anything about it, honestly. And then their hot picks. There's Bast of Syndrome, which we saw the ad for earlier, which still don't remember anything about that or ever even seeing it. Gadguard, I remember, was decent. Gravion, I was okay. And then Dot Hack Legend. I prefer Dot Hack Sign and the Dot Hack Liminality, but this one was okay. It was just the funny, goofy, chibi version of the show. And then we got more of the releases. Yu Yu Hakusho, Angelic Later, Beyblade, Captain Harlock, Dragon Ball Z, Kaleidostar, Kitty Grade, Knights of the Zodiac. And oh, hey, look, another Wizard World Tour ad. Who'd have thunk it? And it continues on with more of the release schedule. Last Exile. If you haven't seen Last Exile, go watch Last Exile. I think it's on Crunchyroll. That has got to be one of my low-key favorite anime that I don't hear talked about enough. Last Exile is fan-flippin-tastic. What else we got in here? Orphan, meh. Panyo Panyo? I don't know anything about that one. There's the Read or Die TV series. More Sayuki, Volume 11. So many DVDs for that one. Tenchi Muyo GXP. Wow, it's crazy to think that that show is over 20 years old. Because that felt like the new one. Because they'd already done so many other Tenchi shows. And to think that that's now 20 years old is crazy. Technolize. 12 Kingdoms. I enjoyed that. I don't think I ever finished that one, though, either. And then some Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu Yu Hakusho. Then Wizard World Tour again. At least this one. They're talking about Chicago. This one makes sense to me. Because you have time, you at least have some time when you get this magazine to plan to go to Chicago. Then we go to Dallas and then so on and so forth. So this one, I'm okay with. Then they talk a little bit about their television section. So they start out with Puffy Amiyumi. Now Puffy Amiyumi was really popular back in the early 2000s. Most of their popularity really popped off here in the U.S. Because they did the intro song for the original cartoon of Teen Titans, which go look that one up if you get a chance. It's actually a really fun song, and it got really really popular. So they end up getting quite a bit of kind of FaceTime with on Cartoon Network, and it kind of was able to grow into a little bit of a fad for a while. And they have some talk about some shojo, which I'll be honest, I'm not really familiar with these ones. Then they go with On the Air, and they show what each particular channel had at the time. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, so let me see what I can make out here. So ABC Family, we had like Beyblade, Digimon, Cartoon Networks where we had most of our anime. Talk about Duel Masters, Rave Master, Dragon Ball Z, Dot Hack Sign, Knights of the Zodiac, Cyborg 009. I remember that one. That one was low key really good. Wolf's Rain. Looks like Inuyasha, which everybody remembers waking up to the credit song of Inuyasha like at 3 in the morning. Talk about We're Trying to Robin, Cowboy Bebop, Dragon Ball GT. I know I'm skipping some in here, but there's just so much. Hamtaro, which why is Hamtaro not streaming somewhere? I would love to use that as a gateway for like my kiddos to watch some anime that's not going to be. I don't have to worry about it being too violent or anything like that. But can't find that one streaming anywhere. Then they got Yu-Gi-Oh! Then they talk about the Fox Box, which has Kirby right back at you, Sonic X, Shaman King, and Ultimate Muscle. The International Channel had Fushigi Yugi and Tenchi Universe. I low key Tenchi Universe, probably my favorite of the Tenchi series. I like Kione a lot. She was level headed and did not deserve the amount of crap that she got put through by Mahoshi and everyone else's antics. Then they got Kids WB where they had Astro Boy, Pokemon Advanced, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Show Next, which I don't know what that one is. It might have been maybe that's part of Showtime. I guess would make sense. But they had GTO, which is a Great Teacher Onizuka, if I remember correctly. And the Stars Action had the Street Fighter 2 movie. I think that's the movie, or actually that might be. Yeah, I think that's the movie because there was also a TV show, but that one was called Street Fighter 2 V, and I only see this in Street Fighter 2, so I think that was just the movie. And then Tech TV had Last Exile. I miss Tech TV. Tech TV, great channel back in the day. They'd go over a lot of different tech news and tech details. It's where X Play originally started, which was a video game review show, which I enjoyed a lot. Morgan Webb was and Adam Sessler were the hosts of that. And Tech TV eventually got bought out by G4, and then all the slowly the tech pieces of Tech TV went away, and it became more lifestyle focused and not even game focused anymore, until it kind of just became a terrible version of like Spike TV before they finally just shut the whole network down. So really wish G4 had not acquired Tech TV, because Tech TV was awesome, and I think it could have lasted longer if they hadn't gotten taken over by G4. And then here we're on to our manga section and talking about some of the different manga coming out. I like this feature here where it talks about the differences between the original Rurouni Kenshin, the manga, and anime. I wish that the creator of Rurouni Kenshin wasn't just a giant, just a-hole. Because honestly, Rurouni Kenshin was one of my favorite anime of all time, and then now it just feels, I don't know, it's sad that it has to feel a little icky because of the creator and what kind of person he was. So, that's where the discussion comes in. Is like, can you separate the creator from the art? And it's tough. I don't know if there's a right answer, but it just sucks. It's a bad situation. And then manga to watch for their May and June releases. So just like with the DVDs, going over the different manga coming out. There's Chrono Crusade. We got to talk about Prince of Tennis, Gundam Seed, so on and so forth. I won't go through a lot of these. Wow, there's Negima Volume 1. Crazy seeing that come out as a manga just back in like May of 2004. And at this point now, the anime finished was what, like over 15 years ago. Another ad here for the Wizard World Tour. Again, though, August, so that at least makes sense. And then getting to know, so basically like do a little bit of a kind of semi-interview here with a manga creator, and then more release dates going through here. Magic's Night Ray Earth, wow. Forgot that one existed. That takes me back. Then, of course, as you always had with magazines, the subscribe now card included, although this particular one versus being an actual like card to come out was actually just a page that you would need to actually cut out, or they would just tell you to go and try and sign up for it online instead, which I'm guessing what they really would prefer you to do. And then a little detail on some of the theatrical releases. Not a ton, obviously. Yu-Gi-Oh! We have the Inuyasha movies. So this was, I think, probably for the first one that came out back in, maybe it was the first or second one that came out. The one they're talking about here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Aeon Flux over here. And then they're talking a little bit about Japan's most prolific anime studios. Then they have the video game section. So a lot of this will be at games that anime that became video games, or maybe video games that are kind of anime adjacent. So the Yu Yu Hakusho game. We got Dead or Alive down here, which is honestly that's pretty anime adjacent. Looks like the Shaman King game. Talk a little bit about games you could import, so like One Piece, Grand Battle 3 for the GameCube, and then Bobo 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 Bobo. I don't know how many times you say Bobo Bobo, but apparently that was one you could import for the Game Boy Advance. And then back to our release schedule here. See what some of these old games were. Okay, and Mega Man Anniversary Collection. We've had so many since then. Ooh, Pikmin 2. That's kind of crazy to think of how old that is at this point. Transformers, Astro Boy. Ooh, over here we got Onimusha 3. Never did play the third one. I beat the first, played through most of the second, and never actually got around to the third. Got Duel Masters. Ooh, we got Mario Golf. What else we got here? Samurai Showdown. Then they got a few hot tips in here. Something for Mobile Suit Gundam, Nightshade, Ninja Gaiden. The hot tip on that was just to get good because that game was flipping hard. And then another one for Onimusha 3. And then they literally just called this section stuff. Today they probably would have called it swag, or they could have called, or something like that, or just call it merch. But they go over some of the different figures and plushes you could buy. I really like the Kirara plush here. Kind of want to go and see if I can find one of those to buy. This cat is actually a purse or a bag. We got Yu Yu Hakusho. Then we have an ad here for FanimeCon in 04. Another one here, May. And like, are you sure that's enough time to try to get people there? I don't know. Talk about Japanese game graphics. And a dot hack ad here, which apparently also had a trading card game. Go figure. Then we got some more overseas products. Bright Nights Big City, Crushionate the Opposition, and Duel Masters. And then SD Gundam, which I forgot that one exists. Maybe that's one I could try to show the kids. I think that one's might be friendly enough. And then they show a few more different products from Japan. Then we got our ad here for Spider-Man 2. And there's a Yuki for Fruits Basket. Another Sayuki figure, it looks like. And then some soundtrack details over here, and various different popular Japanese songs, musicians, and then just the preview cover here for the next issue of Anime Insider, featuring Ghost in the Shell. So apparently that would go on sale in June, which is odd because this is a June-July issue, so I guess the June one would be for August, September. I don't know. But then they have their parting shot here, which is their message. And then one more ad here for Galaxy Angel. And then the back cover here, back cover ad is Wolf's Rain, which doesn't surprise me too much considering the feature that it got in the issue. But that is our June and July 2004 issue of Anime Insider. I still wish we had more like options for some of these magazines. Anime Insider went defunct back in, I think, 2009. New Type USA was another magazine out there that's pretty popular, but that one went under as well, I think like a year earlier, 2008. So I know it's not a world for magazines anymore, but I do still kind of like being able just to flip through some of these old issues. Wish we'd have a few more options these days, but everything now is online, which is fine. You know, I'm obviously online right now, same as everyone else. But I do like being able to go and visit some of these older issues to see how long it's been, and just kind of talk about how things used to be, and just kind of almost make it like an archive of just like people know where we've come from having to get DVDs in the mail to now just being able to stream it on your computer or your TV. But I digress. That's enough of that for now. But thanks for listening. As always, feel free to leave any comments or thoughts you have on the video. And then there's the obligatory, feel free to like and subscribe. But otherwise, thanks for joining me. Hope you have a good rest of your day.